Dubai was supposed to be the safest bet in the most unstable region on Earth, a city that turned geography into advantage, volatility into opportunity, and tax-free sunshine into a magnet for global wealth. But on February 28th at 4:17 a.m., that illusion cracked. Missile debris struck the seafront side of the Fairmont Hotel, briefly turning one of the world's most polished skylines into something closer to a war zone. Within days, property prices dropped 20%, hotel bookings fell 60%, and wealthy residents were reportedly paying up to $500,000 just to leave by private jet. Cities get attacked and recover all the time. New York did, London did. But Dubai is different because Dubai wasn't built on deep roots. It was built on movement. Capital that can relocate, people who can leave, trust that can evaporate faster than it was created. And when a city is optimized for speed, flexibility, and global mobility, what happens when the flow suddenly reverses? Dubai's rise was never supposed to happen this fast. Unlike its neighbors, Dubai didn't have vast oil reserves to fund slow organic development. Abu Dhabi controls nearly 90% of the UAE's oil wealth, leaving Dubai with just enough resources to kickstart growth, but nowhere near enough to sustain prosperity indefinitely through natural resources alone. So Dubai did something unusual. It attempted to compress centuries of economic evolution into roughly 3 decades. Building a financial hub, a logistics gateway, a luxury destination, and a global migration magnet all at once. And for a while it worked. Population more than doubled in 20 years. Billions in foreign investment poured in, and waves of global instability elsewhere actually strengthened Dubai's position. Wealthy Russians fleeing sanctions, entrepreneurs escaping high-tax Europe, and families leaving conflict zones all flowed into the emirate, reinforcing the idea that Dubai didn't just survive instability, it benefited from it. But that advantage depended on one fragile assumption. Instability would always happen somewhere else. For decades, the title of Middle East financial hub shifted depending on who could best claim the position of safe alternative. Beirut once held that role before civil war shattered its reputation in the 1970s. Bahrain later positioned itself as a stable option, until Dubai overtook it with an even stronger promise of openness and security. Behind each transition was the same logic. Capital doesn't need perfection, it needs predictability. And Dubai optimized everything around that perception. Because unlike traditional cities that accumulate depth slowly across generations, Dubai designed itself to be frictionless from the beginning. Easy visas, zero income tax, fast company formation, global connectivity, lifestyle infrastructure built for immediate appeal. It wasn't just a city, it was a platform. But platforms behave differently from places with roots. In most global cities, residents are deeply embedded into the system. They hold citizenship or long-term residency, their children attend schools with years-long waiting lists, and mortgages tie households into decades of financial commitment. Leaving is expensive, not just financially, but structurally. Dubai works differently. Only about 15% of residents are Emirati citizens, while roughly 85% are expats, most without any realistic pathway to citizenship unless they meet extremely strict criteria such as decades of residency, Arabic fluency, or exceptional wealth. Which means most residents are there by choice, not obligation. The implicit deal is simple: earn well, pay no tax, enjoy the lifestyle. But that also means every resident is constantly performing a silent calculation, weighing opportunity against risk. And when perceived risk changes, even slightly, that calculation can shift overnight. Dubai actively optimized for globally mobile talent through golden visa programs and remote work incentives, attracting entrepreneurs, consultants, crypto founders, and digital professionals whose businesses often exist entirely on laptops. This created a powerful growth engine, but also a hidden vulnerability. Because the exact traits that make people easy to attract also make them easy to lose. Low friction works both ways. A freelancer with global clients, minimal physical infrastructure, and limited legal attachment can relocate faster than most governments can respond to crisis. And that exposes a deeper tension inside Dubai's ambition. Because Dubai never intended to remain only a lifestyle destination, the real goal was to become something closer to Singapore, a place where multinational firms establish regional headquarters and institutional capital commits for decades. But institutional capital behaves very differently from mobile freelancers. A multinational deciding where to place 500 employees doesn't optimize primarily for sunshine or zero tax. They optimize for continuity, evaluating insurance frameworks, legal predictability, talent pipelines, and whether operations can continue uninterrupted across a 10 to 20-year horizon. And this is where perception becomes structural. Because even if daily life continues normally, once a region becomes categorized as an active conflict zone, internal risk models begin to adjust. And when models adjust, capital follows. Dubai's free zones have reportedly seen over $14 billion in cross-border outflows in recent weeks, while high net worth registrations fell 38% as capital redirected towards Singapore. For cities with centuries of financial credibility, shocks like this are survivable. London and New York have endured wars, crashes, and terrorist attacks because institutional trust has been reinforced repeatedly over generations. Dubai, by contrast, is still relatively early in that trust-building cycle. It is still, in many ways, in the audition phase, and auditions become harder when uncertainty enters the room. Tourism and real estate can make a city wealthy, but they rarely make it powerful. The cities that shape the global economy do so by controlling financial flows, embedding capital into institutions, and creating systems that compound over decades. That's why Dubai built the Dubai International Financial Center in 2004, attempting to convince institutional investors that operating there was as secure as operating in London or Singapore. Major firms like Deloitte established offices, and credibility began to accumulate. But credibility in finance isn't built through marketing. It is built through repeated proof that capital remains protected even during stress. Dubai had momentum, but it had not yet reached inevitability. Imagine managing billions in assets with regional exposure. Even if you personally feel comfortable, your decisions are governed by risk committees relying on geopolitical models, insurance calculations, and operational continuity scenarios. And the moment a region becomes classified as conflict exposed, those models begin to change. Exposure is reduced, not necessarily because collapse is expected, but because uncertainty becomes harder to justify. Recent data suggests more than $14 billion has already flowed out of Dubai's financial zones, with high net worth registrations dropping 38% as capital reallocates elsewhere. Finance doesn't just move based on current conditions, it moves based on expectations about future stability. And those expectations feed directly into Dubai's most visible growth engine, real estate. In many economies, property is simply one sector among many. In Dubai, it functions closer to the core operating layer. Rather than relying heavily on income or wealth taxes, Dubai generates a significant portion of public revenue through transaction fees, meaning government income increases when assets change hands. In peak years, approximately 20 to 30% of government revenue has come directly from real estate transaction activity. This creates a powerful flywheel when demand rises. Foreign buyers were allowed full ownership in 2004, triggering waves of demand from individuals seeking stability, tax efficiency, and asset diversification outside their home countries. But many of these purchases are not driven by necessity. They are driven by preference. Choosing Dubai over Lisbon, Athens, or Singapore is often a lifestyle decision rather than a structural commitment. And preference is inherently sensitive to perception. In 2009, Dubai's property market dropped between 40% and 50%, largely because financing conditions collapsed. Demand itself remained. Buyers simply couldn't access credit. When financial conditions improved, demand returned. Today's risk is different. Financing still exists. Confidence is what's being tested, because confidence depends on narrative, and narratives can shift quickly. Dubai's final structural advantage lies in geography. Positioned between East and West, the city built Emirates Airline into one of the most important global transit connectors, transforming its airport into a crossroads linking continents. Geography was the original advantage that everything else compounded on top of, but geography only creates value when routes remain efficient. Several airlines have temporarily suspended flights to Dubai, but the deeper issue isn't whether flights resume. It's how insurers reprice the perceived risk of flying through the region. Higher insurance costs make routes slightly more expensive or slightly less convenient, and in global logistics, slightly worse can be enough. Dubai is unlikely to collapse overnight. There is too much infrastructure, too much Gulf capital backing it, and Abu Dhabi has previously demonstrated willingness to provide financial support when necessary, including a $10 billion bailout during the 2009 debt crisis. Incentives will likely increase, visas may be extended, and capital retention strategies will intensify. And much of this may work. But the deeper question isn't about immediate survival. It's about momentum. Dubai's competitive advantage was never that each individual feature was unique. Low taxes exist elsewhere. Good weather exists elsewhere. Geographic connectivity exists elsewhere. The real advantage was that all of them existed together in one place that felt stable, a bundle of benefits, a narrative of inevitability. But when stability itself becomes uncertain, that bundle begins to unbundle. Capital doesn't need to leave all at once. It only needs to distribute itself slightly more efficiently across multiple alternatives. Growth doesn't need to reverse. It only needs to slow. And for a model built on continuous exceptional expansion, where megaprojects require constant inflows, airlines require constant traffic, and government revenue depends on constant transactions, normal growth may not be enough. Dubai didn't just sell real estate, it sold a version of the future. And the real risk isn't that the future disappears, it's that the future quietly decides to go somewhere else.